Hey everybody, I'm Benjamin, aka the Terrible Australian at supermarcy.com, and welcome to my video review of the biblical drama Risen. So let's get right into it. Now, I've seen quite a lot of sort of faith-based Christian-themed films over the years, because for a lot of people don't know, I'm Catholic, so I've watched pretty much a lot of those growing up, but I've always been more partial kind of to the more biblical ones, kind of like the films like The Ten Commandments or The King of Kings, or sort of more sort of interesting biblical sort of takes on films like the Last Temptation of Christ or The Passion of the Christ. And those are the types of sort of more faith-based films that I really prefer, because those ones are, I just find those ones more sort of compelling as a film compared to sort of the more sort of modern day kind of faith-based films, which, to be honest, a lot of them though kind of just approach sort of how they approach their approach is rather heavy-handed and more about the message rather than sort of telling a compelling story and characters. So with biblical films, I find those more compelling to me because, you know, they have interesting characters and the stories themselves are really interesting, while at the same time having, you know, sort of a message there that, you know, that will resonate for sort of religious or spiritual viewers. But what made Risen really interesting to me as a viewer was it sort of took a very sort of different sort of look at Jesus' story, and instead of doing it sort of the traditional way that it's portrayed in both the Bible and as well as being portrayed in other films and whatnot, between like from the time of his crucifixion to his resurrection, this film sort of takes a different approach because it sort of plays it more as a kind of a procedural and a mystery, because the main character in the film, played by Joseph Fiennes, who's a Roman centurion who's in charge in trying to discover the mystery of what happened to Jesus' body. That, like, everyone assumed that his followers took his body, and others said that that he actually rose from the dead, and he's sort of in charge trying to find out what actually happened. And it's sort of about his character's journey to being a man who's kind of sort of in a dark place in his life, and as sort of when he gets involved in this sort of this mystery, he sort of comes at it as a skeptic. But as the film goes on, and the more he sees of what happens during the story, and it sort of opens his eyes to a whole new world that he didn't experience. And of course, it does have that sort of faith-based message, as most sort of Christian themes do have, particularly in the last half. But compared to like most, and I sort of mentioned this earlier in my video review, it doesn't approach its story in a heavy-handed way. It might maybe a tad in the third act, because, you know, I mean, when you have Jesus in the film, you're going to have sort of all the messages and all that there. But to me, it's sort of how the filmmakers approach the story is to sort of tell an interesting sort of and different take on this story that we've all known, but it sort of does it in a way that it has, you know, that making the story interesting and also making the characters interesting as well. And also, it has a pretty top-notch cast. Joseph Fiennes does a really good job in the lead role, and we sort of follow his character's journey, and he has a great arc as well. And we kind of sort of experiencing all this through his eyes, and we kind of understand like where he is from the beginning right up to the end. And also like other actors in the film, like Tom Felton is kind of like his right-hand man, and also Peter Firth as well. But also Cliff Curtis in the film, New Zealand actor Cliff Curtis, he plays the role of Jesus. But interesting enough though, in the film he's not known by that name in this film. He's known by another name, Yeshua, and which I found really interesting as well. And even like God in the film is not even referred to as God, but Yahweh as well. So I thought that was an interesting sort of touches that the film brought to. And also, the film looks really good as well. Like, the film only had like a $20 million budget, but it looks like it doesn't look cheap at all. It actually looks like a mini epic, and I think it's all due to Kevin Reynolds, who, for all those out there who don't know Kevin Reynolds he's a very prolific director. In the past, he's directed films like Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves, Waterworld, The Count of Monte Cristo. So he knows how to handle. So he's directed a lot of big budget films in the past, particularly sort of the period film variety. So when it comes to this film, he approaches this film the same way as he did in those films. So in a way, he makes a film that's really visually looks great and does not look cheap at all, and it actually has a pretty good budget behind it, so that it kind of feels like a kind of a mini epic. And it's really well directed. Like, he gets good performances out of his actors, and he just knows how to make the story really compelling and interesting. And also, he also co-wrote the script as well. So he definitely this was, in a way, I guess, kind of a passion project for him as well. So, yeah, I mean, it's a really good film. Like I said, probably won't be for everyone, but I do think that even for, like, of course, spiritual or religious people definitely get a lot out of it. But I think even people who aren't might get a kick out of this film as well. Like I said, it's not preachy or too heavy-handed anyway. Like I said, there is a bit of the message and all that, all the sort of faith-based message stuff in there, but it doesn't feel like it's condescending or too heavy-handed. Like, it's there, but it's there for a purpose. But I think the film has a lot of good qualities in it that sort of make it stand out compared to other sort of faith-based films that have been out over the last couple of years. And in a way, it's more like the filmmakers wanted to tell a film like this without doing it in a way that those other films have done in the past, by making it just a compelling story that anyone can enjoy. So, yeah, overall, I really liked Risen a lot. I thought it was a pleasant surprise, and it's a kind of film that really appealed to me as well. But not just from a spiritual standpoint, but just even as a film itself, I just found it really good and just really well made, and definitely really strong as well. And I definitely recommend it for people to check out as well. So, so if I had to give Risen a rating, I give it a solid 4. I really like this film a lot. And yeah, it was just a really pleasant surprise. And it actually did really well with sort of the interesting concept of its sort of take, by making it more of a sort of a mystery procedural than anything else. And it does a really good job. And of course, great performances in it as well, particularly from Joseph Fiennes and Cliff Curtis, who are great. And I forgot to say this before when I was talking about Cliff Curtis, is that he was an interesting casting choice because if you looked realistically how Jesus probably would have looked like at the time, he probably would have looked more like Cliff Curtis than say, the traditional sort of white guy with blonde hair and stuff like that. So, yeah, so he did a really good job as well. He's not in the movie much, but he really makes the most of his scenes. So, yeah, overall, I really like this film a lot. And again, it's 4 stars from me. So, yeah, that's the end of my video review of Risen. I hope you guys all enjoyed it, and I'll see you all later. See you, everyone. Bye.